Hi everyone, kia ora. As you saw last night, I was very surprised by having to get up a couple of times, and it's made today a little bit more nervy for me, so just please bear with me. I'm kind of glad to see the room only half full because that's less terrifying. I was actually going to start off with my video that got played last night, but you all saw it, so I'm going to shake it up and I'm going to change my mind about that because you all saw what it was about. And I thought what might be quite cool is just to give you an example. We've been talking a lot in the last couple of days about narrative and storytelling and how important it is to try and connect with people about what's important to them. And so I thought I'd just share with you the 4 project objectives that were handed to me when we started to set up this project in the very beginning, and then actually give you my pitch when I spoke to the public, when I spoke to our stakeholders about what the project was about, and you can tell me what you think of the difference. So the 4 project objectives were to help facilitate inter-regional travel between Auckland and Northland by allowing the full benefits of the Western Ring route to be realised by upgrading the State Highway 18-1 connection, to improve the capacity of the Northern Corridor, enhancing network resilience and easing congestion for all modes of transport, to improve efficiency and reliability of the Northern Corridor, to support economic development and identified growth areas adjacent to the Northern Corridor. Now that was really a big mouthful and did not say anything, and you could pretty much change out the words Northern Corridor for any project in Auckland. Also did not talk about the multimodal aspect, so the key success of our project is that we were all about every mode. So we were about bus services, we were about walking and cycling, and with them, roading was important as well. So if I have to challenge myself to say my quick pitch, what I used to say to everyone was, right, well, the Northern Corridor is going to really change the way we travel around the North Shore. We're going to be building a new motorway connection that will mean we can bypass the really busy Constellation Drive and get all the way out to the airport from the North Shore without having to get off the motorway. It's a really big pain for everyone who lives on the North Shore, having to go through the city to get to the airport in Auckland. We're also going to extend the Northern Busway. It's going to make all of our bus trips more reliable, on time, and keep us away from traffic in the peak hours. And we're going to build lots of walking and cycling paths that we don't have any at the moment, and it's going to really help all of our kids and all of the rest of us get around to school, work, uni, and shops. Kind of a bit different. So I just wanted to, a little illustration of how important I think storytelling is to a project. So skipping the video. So the Northern Corridor project is one of those ones that was in a very tightly constrained urban corridor, so we were really built up on all sides. We were long and skinny, we were 5 k's down in one direction, 7 in the other, and we went through many different neighbourhoods, all of whom needed to travel through the site when it was in construction, and also many other neighbourhoods further to the north that needed to come through our site as well. And each of those neighbourhoods had really different ethnic communities. They also had different reasons for being there. 3 of the reasons were industrial sites, and the people in those sites have lots of issues because they weren't quite correctly zoned in the first place, and rather than being large industrial businesses, they've ended up being smaller unit types, so there was a lot more need for employee car parking. And they have all sorts of issues with congestion. It's one of the busiest state highways in New Zealand, probably not comparable to busy Australian state highways. And we have a really interesting dynamic that we already have a really successful busway on the North Shore, and we're up to the statistics of 50% of all people heading into the city for work using the busway in the morning. So that's 50% of all people travelling over the Harbour Bridge into Auckland City are on a bus. So we already have quite a lot of support for that mode of transport, but that's the commuters, so there's less neighbourhood uptake for local services of buses. And we also had a really interesting challenge for our project, was that even though we had all these benefits that we were going to be able to bring, we also had quite a severe impact on a number of public open spaces and reserves and sporting facilities. So the North Shore is home to over 30 different sporting codes, and we were going to be unfortunately impacting on the land of some of those sites that are close to the motorway, and we had to come up with a great strategy to work out how we could not take something away from the community with our project. So, everyone's the same. We all get to the point we get given our project and we have to look at building our engagement plan, and I was really lucky in that we have a management team in NZTA who were all really committed when we procured the contract for our consultants, that we would have a vision of the public engagement really mattering to our project. And what this meant is that we were able to get Oricon New Zealand on board with us, and they really had already bought into our vision for the project, and they really supported it because we've been up front as part of procurement of what we expected and what we needed, and we were really clear that they would be helping us to listen, and that we would be changing the project as we went, and we would be adapting the design. So we outright said that, as part of that commercial arrangement. We also made it really clear via workshops and when the team was evolving that people had to be really genuine and explain to the public clearly what parts of the project could be influenced and what parts couldn't be. So we were not going to go out there broad spectrum, we were going to be very focused, knowing that not all parts of the project could be changed. Just trying to think of an example, the busway we knew had to be on the eastern side of the motorway because the western side of the motorway at the top went through a significant ecological area that was really important to mana whenua and had all sorts of kari trees in there which can be up to 600 years old. And so we told people that, we were up front and we told people that, and they were very accepting of those reasons. So we designed our engagement program. This is a couple of pictures on the next few slides. We were trying to reach as many voices as possible. We've all talked about that over the last few days. We all used exactly the same engagement channels that you would have been using. A couple of little different things was that we were trying to go to people. So we had a lot of our open days, rather than in community halls, we had them at Westfield, or we went there in the weekends and we caught different people at different points of the day. We had play mats and things for kids to take 5 minutes out and play while we could actually talk to young parents. And I got a lot of comments about people really appreciating those sort of simple things that allow people to stop and talk. And we obviously did all the traditional methods of contacting all the households in the region via surveys and newsletters and emails and so on. But the key to it all really was making sure that we'd done that initial work to set up the plan where we had segmented everybody and then reviewed it, and then segmented it again and then reviewed it, and we just carried on doing that for several months while we were out there meeting all of these people and asking them for their issues and their aspirations and listening, and then we'd go back and review the risks and the opportunities again and keep going. And it was just a lot of diligence really in those beginning phases. This is some of our events. So top left is at the university. So we have a university within our catchment area. We went to orientation day, and actually all the students were really keen to talk. They were, might have had a few beersies, but they were happy to come and talk to us. And the key objective there was learning what they needed from public transport, so that when we had built these new services, we could get a higher uptake for the local feeder services that feed into the larger route. And then on the other top is the Meadowwood Community House, which is one of the significant social hubs within our area. They would have regular events, whether that was just for summer or Easter or Christmas, and we just went along every single time and had a little stand there, and our people all came along from different parts of the project and talked to the public and just got to get to know the different types of people that lived in that community hub. And there's some more pictures there of our site at Westfield. And then the bottom right is a photo, so I was saying before about our industrial areas, so they were characterised by small business owners, a lot of whom were sole traders, couldn't leave their businesses to come and talk to us because they were the sole person there, or they might be feeling unable to get away to come to an event. So we worked with the Business Association and worked out that if we went to the local cafes in each of the areas regularly and held 7 a.m, come and talk to us and have a free coffee and muffin on your way to work, and they would come and talk to us because that was before they were open and it meant they could take time out. So that was something we did regularly. And this is a little slide, Oricon, as we have all heard, fantastic stuff with VR and artist impressions, and we also used Bang the Table and had the IT available, and obviously links on the website as well. So I thought about what might be the things that you might be interested to hear about, because you all know how to write an engagement plan, and I thought 3 key things. One was that we really formalised the approach to engagement, and so it was every manager's job to work on engagement, and it wasn't just my job and the engagement team. So it was actually part of everyone's job descriptions, and we worked through and built an engagement matrix where every key stakeholder group or community group was matched to a manager, and then it stated what their responsibilities were with that group, and then my job was to be the person that was overseeing that strategy. They would check in with me before they were doing things. They would also just coordinate across different groups, and we just ran it as a bit of a team effort in that sense. We also had, when we came to decision points, we used a multi-criteria analysis tool, as most projects do, but it's not actually that normal to separate out community feedback as a weighted or scored part of the objective when you're going through weighting your decision making, but we did that as part of our project, so it had equal value to the social impact report and cultural assessment and so on. So it was quite a bold statement to put that in there. And then we just made every single member of the team, or however many of them, take turns coming out and actually meeting the community. So we'd go and do a planting day and just get to know the people in the neighbourhood. Or we, as I said, we'd go to Meadowood and do an Easter event and they would come along. And it just really put faces to the names, you know, they're not just writing a report about someone or doing a design for someone they'd never met. So just kept it really personable and got them out. And the other key thing in New Zealand, we're not quite the same setup as you, but we're central government and then we have local council. And a really important point was there's other projects and other things going on in the same community, and people get really frustrated at coming to an event and not getting answers to the other things that are happening. So we took a strategy of always having all the other projects in the region with us at our events, or a representative, or we knew the answer, so that we were able to provide a one-stop shop for everybody, and just help reduce the confusion, because it doesn't help anyone when you say, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question, even though you've come along specifically. Yeah, sorry, I should have, I missed that point. Yeah, we did have a different person that was doing the social impact report. So what we did was sit down with her and just work out what her timeline was over that 2-year period for needing to do interviews and focus groups and things like that. And we timed it so that she was able to find those people via our own consultation efforts, or build it in, or she came along to all of our events and was able to feel the feedback for herself. So yeah, we were separate. The second thing was really focusing effort on the really key challenges. So we actually brought in additional members for our team that worked just on our key challenges. So I had my core engagement team, and then I brought in extra people who could help us with our specialist tasks. So we had a lot of work to do. We had to move our hockey facility, and then we had to move 2 other facilities as well. A BMX and a pony club, and so that was a really intensive work stream, you know, really acknowledging that these people aren't necessarily business people, and this is going to be scary for them. We really need to support them and facilitate that process and make them feel comfortable with making business decisions around moving their facility. So we had a stakeholder manager whose whole job was to work on the sports club stream. Interestingly, we also had an issue where everyone loves the busway, everyone wants the bus, but everyone didn't want a bus station in the industrial area. And that was the polar opposite of what you would expect, but actually people didn't want traffic generation in an already congested area for industrial deliveries and that sort of thing. So we had to pull that out and really work on that separately, and try and figure out how we could build the station with the least disruption, and talk to all of the business owners and the commercial users and have quite a focus on that. And then the other example I've got there with the Chinese language there is, this was in one of the residential communities, and we had to close an off-ramp into this residential community for safety reasons as part of the upgrade. And we went out and told people about this, and we got kind of lukewarm feedback back. Everyone seemed, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. We'd mentioned that we could be able to build an overbridge so that people could go on a diverted route to come back over in the same location. Lukewarm feedback, oh yeah, okay, sounds okay. And we really didn't feel that we'd got the right tempo. We really didn't feel that we'd understood that issue enough. So we set aside time to then go back and do a specialised survey with just that area of people, and talk to them a little bit more. And we broke down what the overbridge might mean, in that it could mean increased traffic, it could mean, we might need speed bumps and all those little issues that you need to actually provide more detail on. And it was interesting that by the end of that more detailed consultation period, people had changed their minds and they really didn't want the overbridge because it was going to generate traffic past their school and create issues for them. So we actually ended up not doing that. So it was an example of not doing something based on drilling down a bit deeper into the community's feedback. And my final point was, again, in New Zealand, so we have statutory obligations to work with mana whenua, but we also really, really value it and really enjoy it. And NZTA, just at the same time as NCI was being set up, had put together an integrated iwi group model, and that meant bringing together kaitiaki, or leaders from all of the 26 iwi that are in Auckland, asking them to come to the table if you're interested in this project. We ended up with 12 who felt that they had interest or a rohi over that part of our area that they wanted to be involved in. And so over the 2 years, we met with them every single month to look at what values and what issues and concerns they had. And then to build on that, we went through all of the environmental measures and discussed with them their feelings on stormwater and all the different things that they have concerns about with creating a better environment. And we adopted pretty much all of the recommendations of our IIG group. And the reason it worked is because we built a relationship and we just met every single month. And it didn't matter if they were angry the previous month and we had to go away and do some more work and then we had to come back and re-explain. We still came back and we still did that together. And it really built our respect. And we ended up with, it's probably too hard to see, but we ended up with a really amazing outcome from environmental measures, but also from storytelling. So we learnt a lot ourselves about how the land had been used in the past, and our story ended up being about how our project was going to help with safe passage for all people. It had been a traditional area where people would traverse through to get to the streams and the planting areas. So all of our bridges and structures, all of our sign marking and so on now is going to follow those themes. So each of the project zones have a slightly different look and a feel as you go through the landscape, and that's following the traditional ancestral path. And yeah, the result was great. So we had an objective obviously of reducing submissions for our Board of Inquiry, and we actually only ended up with 33. And it was funny because in a way we almost felt disappointed because we're like, oh, okay, only 33 people care. But if you flip that around, it just means that only 33 people felt strongly enough that they had enough input or they needed to take it further. Trying to look at it on the positive side. And we also had 70% of those submissions were actually in support. So, you're only ending up with, I can't remember now, 7, I think, people who were opposed to our project or partly opposed to our project. And unanimous support from mana whenua, which we were really proud of. It's not something that happens a lot, when you're going through a submissions and consenting process. And then I just wanted to share with you, very excitingly, so one of my favourite parts of our project is a walking and cycling bridge. That's part of our walking and cycling paths, and it was my favourite. I actually live near this area, and I learnt a lot by talking to the Historical Society, who used to come and see me every Saturday when we had our open days, and they explained to me that a really key road used to go across the brow of this hill. And then when we ploughed the motorway through 15 years earlier, we'd broken apart this, important local road crossing. And so it was a natural place for there to be a walking and cycling bridge into the new metropolitan area that was emerging. And so we proposed that we would have this bridge there, and we had huge community support. And we talked a lot about the story of how we were reconnecting the two sides of the hill again, and told people the story of the old road that their grandmother would have used. And we also spent a lot of time working with mana whenua on the design of the bridge. So our structure there replicates weaving patterns from the baskets when they were doing the food gathering, because this part of the zone is in our food gathering bowl area, and some of the reeds in the area as well. And so this was when I finished on the project. So I went then through the construction phase and set up the Construction Alliance team. And I've been away from that team now for 6 months. And then just last week, my bridge went up. And it was very exciting to see. People came out at midnight to watch it go up. And there was just, really huge support for people, really excited. And now they all just want to know when they can use it. And we still have to build the path that it links to, so that's a bit of a problem. It's so rewarding, isn't it, doing what we do. And then being able to actually see something come to life is really super cool. So that's my project.
Alright, so no real surprises why that one took out the big one. Any questions for Aimee before we keep moving? Microphone? Just wait a sec, let's grab the microphone up there.
Hi, I just wanted to know, from the time that you started your engagement actually on the ground engaging to the time that you actually had shovels in the ground, what was that time period like?
So it was 3 years, so 2 years for design and consenting, and then going through the approvals process. But that's because this project was considered of such size and significance in Auckland with our growth problems that it was accelerated. So we went through a special Board of Inquiry process that is set down statutorily to only take 9 months, and you can only appeal to the High Court in New Zealand. So rather than going through that two-stage council process where people can appeal and it goes on for a long time, so we would never have been able to achieve that on a normal project. But we started construction within 3 years.
Just behind.
Unfortunately, I missed a bit of it at the beginning because I had to go and prepare for the plenary next. But I was really struck by the bridge thing.
Yeah.
And because in a way, what you're doing is you're having this big travel, or motorway network coming through, and that's what the work is on. But what you're actually doing is using that project, using engagement to create something that is kind of putting, communities back together, addressing past weaknesses where something good was removed. Also, public transport's there for reducing congestion. And it just struck me that's a really important symbol of the positivity that good, effective public and genuine public engagement can produce. That along with building a big road or whatever, you can actually put some things back into the community if you have that openness to not just adapting what you propose to do, but actually doing different things you hadn't predicted.
Yeah.
But it requires that openness and that learning agility and that's just really exciting because that isn't a story we normally hear.
Yeah, I think it is quite symptomatic of change in New Zealand in the construction and government sector. And we do have a new government policy statement that really is trying to push us along on this side as well. So it's more about people and access and safety and giving back. So that's really helping us. But the key, I think, was having it in our mission statement, in the very beginning, and being really clear with our consultant team. We wanted them to support us in that. So I think setting it up at the beginning, almost contractually, is really important. But thank you.
Can I just build on that question? You touched on the political context. I guess I'm interested in that and how it's quite exceptional that they were so receptive to some of those extra changes that would have costed extra money.
You think so, but no. That's the thing. You don't need to cost. It doesn't need to cost more just to make it actually valuable to the community. There's lots of trade-offs. Like I said, we ended up not building one of the road bridges because it wasn't actually something that the community wanted. So that then meant that we had more room to move around with other parts of the project. But yeah, we did have that flexibility within there. The key reason why our project was able to kind of bridge that gap between the two different types of government within New Zealand, our previous government and our new government, is because we were multimodal and we were really trying to do everything across the whole system and be really clever about doing that rather than just being about roads or it wasn't so easy to pick off a project that had so many benefits.
So your project was contracted by the old government?
The business case was, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty.
Thank you, and I'm also delighted that there are not that many people in the room as well. So before I start, I actually want to acknowledge Januki. Januki is from Bang the Table, so you may know her or have met her over the course of the last couple of days. I know she has to leave shortly. Januki was my team leader at the City of Casey, and she pretty much set up a lot of the work that brought us to where we were able to put in a submission for last night's award. So thank you to Januki, and obviously that's why Bang the Table have stolen her from us because she was marvellous at her job. So I just wanted to acknowledge that first. Now, obviously, I've got the last presenter for the end of the conference, and I didn't want to bore you to death, so I'm going to give you a 3-minute video. Kick back and enjoy and have a look at our community.
Because come along if you feel like a room without a roof. Come along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Come along if you know what happiness is to you. Come along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here comes that news, start listening.
It's a bit of fun. Pretty much every day is as happy as that for us at the City of Casey. So just to give you a bit of context about where we are southeast of Melbourne, so about 35 k's out of Melbourne, and currently our population is just over 325,000. We'll grow to up to 500,000 by the year 2040. So obviously we've got a really diverse community, and in fact that was done in 2014. And we have grown by 14,000 people this year. So we're growing so fast and we're trying to keep up, and we have an incredibly diverse community. And so obviously engaging with the community was not going to be easy, and certainly couldn't be put on one person or a very small team of people. So we needed to get up to speed and find ways to do that. So the best way for us to start with that was to develop the first community engagement strategy, and it was underpinned by a couple of really key components. That was to get the leadership team on board and for them to go from top down and really encourage engagement throughout the whole of the organisation. We needed to be able to provide the tools and the resources to be able to give the staff what they needed to go out and do their job. And we also needed to make sure that we had somewhere to store the information that they were bringing back. So that was really, really important. And we needed to provide them, with a real purpose and somewhere to streamline the information into. So I'm ahead of myself. I don't know what I did there. So we created the engagement experts. So last year we had 25 people, an email or an expression of interest was sent out to the organisation, and they were invited to put in an expression of interest, or managers could also put someone up to be an engagement expert, and which meant that they were going to be trained with the full 5 days of IAP2 training and have the certificate of engagement. Initially last year, it was around if you had an action plan that you needed to execute, and you needed to do some engagement on that, then people were able to apply and be part of the engagement experts. So 25 people over 5 days were trained, and Danuki was part of that process, and it was pretty intensive. And we had Martin from IAP2, and we love Martin. By the end of November, Martin would have trained 57 people in our organisation on the full 5 days of community engagement. So we're obviously we don't get out much. We're very shy bunch of people, but we have this incredible opportunity in our organisation. Not only we've been supported to have everybody do the IAP2 training, but we meet monthly, and it's just such a fantastic way to be able to engage with people within the organisation. But also, for me in particular, I found all these people who are, which I'm pretty sure some people have this problem too, where they're engaging with the community, but you're not even aware of it. And my role as community engagement advisor, how can I make sure that people are actually, getting out there and doing best practice if I'm not even sure they're engaging? So I've uncovered very quietly, I've been squirreling away information, but people who are sending out SurveyMonkey surveys by email to their 1,000 stakeholders that I know nothing about. Or they're using, through conversations in the engagement experts, I will find out that they're using, Typeform, and they're not using our Bang the Table platform, but they're sending it out in different ways that we're not aware of. And it's not about smacking people on the hand, it's more about saying, tell me about that. Why would you use that when we've got this great platform that you can utilise, but also so we can capture all the information in one place. So the Engagement Experts has just been such a fantastic program, because it's allowed not only for our leadership team to be right behind engagement, and they really understand it, and they're coming to us and asking us about engagement, and they're not scared of open engagement anymore. I think that there was a resistance, and I'm sure other people have found it as well. There's a bit of pushback when you say you're going to have an open engagement or you're going to ask for submissions, and people get a little bit scared and say, we don't want them to give us information, we just want to give them a survey, and then they can say yes or no to this. But there's just such an openness now, and so we're getting rich information, and where people are feeling more confident, and I mean, our engagement experts, just from those photos, we've got kinder people who are involved with kindergartens, we've got urban planners, customer service officers, sport and recreation, events people. They're right across the organisation, so it's almost as if we've got this spider web out there, and it's just bringing back all this information. And because we're meeting monthly, they're bringing it back not only to me, but they're bringing it back to everyone else in the organisation, and they're engaging. We had a large engagement a couple of months ago in one of our small kind of towns that people are a bit cranky because they don't like the way that things are set up. They feel a bit disjointed. So one of the engagement experts got someone from a completely different department to facilitate when they were going out to the community, because he felt he was too close to the project to do it himself. So it's really empowering people within the organisation to have a go, but also that they're trusting each other and building their capacity as they're going along as well. So it's just enriched the whole engagement process at the City of Casey, and it's really, really encouraged that when you're engaging, that you're not just engaging, you're doing it well, and you're doing it for a purpose, and you're feeding up to something. You're not just doing it because you're ticking a box. And I listen to the engagement experts, and they say things like, because part of their role is that they're an engagement expert for their department or their team. So they will have a team member come to them and say, I'd like to engage, this is what I want to do, what do you think? And then they will provide some feedback for them, and then they can come to me, we can have a meeting. But it's funny, I heard an engagement expert saying to one of their team members last week, yes, but unless it's authentic engagement, there's no point going out. And I was like, yes, that's great. They're listening. So we've created some tools to support our engagement experts, but also for the whole organisation. So we have a Yammer page. We have a Yammer page, our online kind of intranet, and so this is available to everybody. But the engagement experts are the ones who are feeding this out to their teams and departments. So we've got an engagement handbook that pretty much gives them the how-to of engagement, not just around engagement, but also the instructions on how to use our Bang the Table platform, which we call Casey Conversations. We have a tiered tool, which is an online tiered tool. So if they recognise that they are going to have an internal engagement, they're not going externally, it kind of gives them a bit of a, you're in the wrong place. You're not engaging externally. There's no point you going through this process. And then they will go to our engagement, our internal engagement team, and speak to them. They will then be provided, when they get to the end of this tiered tool, it will tell them whether it's a bronze, silver or gold engagement for the organisation, depending on the weight, and also if you've got disgruntled community members, whatever's going on for them. And then it will spit out a little report and say, yours is a silver engagement, this is where you find your template to do an engagement plan, you'll need to do a comms plan, and here are a couple of examples of what we've done in the organisation over the last year. So they will have, a whole lot of examples, and if all else fails, they call me. That's fine. I'll walk them through it, and that's what the engagement expert's for as well. They will walk them through it once they have that information. And then we also have a handbook as well it says Community Engagement Model Handbook, but it's not actually that, it's the methods. So they've got a whole range of methods that they can use based on the core principles and the training that we've had. and then they have templates in there as well. So once they decide this is, I want to do a card sort, or I want to do a World Cafe, or however they want to go about it, then they will they'll have the examples there to go and use the templates as well. So what has it done for us by doing this? We have increased opportunities for the community to get involved with us and for us to be involved with them. We have a community task force which is made up of the whole kind of diverse community. We put it out to the community and said, would you like to monitor the council plan? Thinking, a couple of people put their hand up, 125 people put their hand up and said, I would like to do it. So it was a formula was created to make sure we had the whole diverse community involved. And this is our first year, and we've done 3 engagements with them. And it's just been such a learning along the way. And now we're ready for next year. We'll have a new cohort, but we're ready for it. And it's not scary. And even, our leadership team, we're a little bit nervous at the start, and to say the least. And now they just say, just let us know when you've done it. So it's great. So the takeaway, I suppose, is to get buy-in from senior management and make sure they're on board with you. And even though they're not really asking much of me at the moment, they know that we've built the processes and the tools, and we've got the strategy to back us up. So they're on board with us, which is amazing. And they're the champions, which is great. Gives staff a purpose outside their role. As I said, we've got people who are customer service officers, urban planners, like people from everywhere, and they love it because they're part of something that is outside of their own role. And I think someone was talking about one of the sessions we were doing yesterday about just taking people outside of their normal thinking, and they think differently and they have something different to offer. So I think giving them a purpose outside of their own role gets them really involved, and as long as you're checking in with them and giving them the tools and everything they need to help them do their job. Provide IAP2 training as a team. We've done our training all together. Danuki did hers all together with the 25 last year, and I've had 32, and poor Martin, he's done an awesome job, but he's had 32 people in the room and he's had to keep them engaged the whole way through, and he's done an awesome job. But I said to him it was so important that we didn't get split up, because that meant that the strength of the team was going forward as we went throughout the year. So we're only a few months into this year, but we're all a big team. Meet often and share stories of engagement, especially wins and challenges. I think that's so important as well. Don't just always tell good stories. Tell stories that help people understand that sometimes it's not going to work, and what are the lessons that you've learnt out of it as well. So that's pretty much me. Thank you. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
Oh, got a few questions. So I might start down the front of Kate, then we'll work our way middle back.
I'm Kate from Barwon Water in Geelong. Congratulations on your award last night. I just had a couple of questions. You talked a little bit before about storing the information that was coming back in from the various engagements. So I was just wondering if you'd be able to share a bit more information on perhaps what platform you used or how you actually did that, because that's a challenge I'm facing. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are facing that, and we are definitely in that. We're not 100% there. We're almost there. We've been talking to a number of different people about it, and it seems like a lot of people have this problem. So we wanted something that would talk to Engagement HQ, which we've managed to find a couple that do that. But we also need it so that if people are getting reports on Excel from SurveyMonkey or Typeform or whatever, we can still feed it up, because we need somewhere to do some benchmarking reporting, and we just can't have all these siloed reports all over the organisation. So I'm happy to chat to you and feed that back to you once a decision is finally made. There's a lot of loops and hoops to jump through, but we're almost there. Yeah. Great.
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
when you first began, what was the level of resistance in the council? Was it a really high level or?
I would actually, if Danuki doesn't mind, I'll throw to her because she was involved at the very start, and Danuki's been working across community engagement, was at City of Casey for 12 years. So, Danuki, perhaps you would like to answer that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yes, there was resistance from councillors, especially because they were re-elected, or the election process was undertaken in 2017. So a lot of the process was around transitioning them into their roles as councillors, and engagement was part of that process. So it was part of the induction process. And so for 6 straight weeks, every week, they had a briefing and I presented around engagement and really brought them along on the journey of community engagement at Casey, and how it can support their decision making and strengthen their commitment to being a counsellor. And so it wasn't easy. It took a lot of time and patience, but it was a lot about educating them and also bringing them into the process. So they were involved in the design. They approved the design. They participated. They attended the sessions and they welcomed the participants. They were part of the face-to-face engagement. They were given opportunities to promote the engagement to their own wards. So really having them part of that process really broke that sort of barrier down.
Thanks, Danuki.
One more question there. Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether I can see you afterwards to find out whether we can exchange a bit of the tools, that type of stuff.
Sure.
Really quite interested to having a look at the EOI that you put out and your tools. The expression of interest that you put out as well.
Yep.
I think there was a question down the back. Yep. Down there.
Congratulations on building an engaging organisation. It sounds like that's what you've done, and I think that's extremely important with local government because it is the closest to the people and you really make a difference to people's lives. I wanted to ask about the training. So was it the IAP2, the 5-day certificate, was it that kind of training, or how did you, if you've got people attending that from all across the organisation, how did you do that internally with your budget? And how did you, because I've come from local government, I'm not anymore, but I'm just thinking, to get the manager of parks or facilities or whatever it was to release someone for 5 days of training, that's a big ask, and well done.
Yeah, thank you. Again, Danuki may be able to speak to this, but initially the first cohort that went through, there was an amount of money that it was recognised engagement was really important. So the amount of money was put into the 5 days of training, and it was done in a full 5 day block. So that is a big commitment, and I'm not sure how you went with that one. I know with my story for this year, but yeah.
That's a really good question, and that was also part of that senior buy-in. So 2 years ago, there was some funding allocated to improve processes in the organisation, and engagement was one of them. It went up to councillors, and as part of that process, a budget was allocated to deliver in training to staff as well as an engagement framework. So the funding came from the councillors and through the sort of improvement processes, and then allowed that corporate funding to be allocated to train up those 25. And I know since then what Anne's been referring to is being more led by the department, so that sort of created that culture of the standard of engagement that needed to be delivered.
Yeah, what's happened this year is because there was such fantastic buy-in from management and also across the organisation, this year I put out an expression of interest without saying that they needed to have an action plan item for them to be feeding up to. It was more from an interest level, and let them know what happened last year with the engagement experts. And I just couldn't believe that we got 32 people, and then I was thinking 20 if that, and then I had to go out to all of their team leaders and say, look, I've had this interest, and I had 4 from one team leader, so I had to make really sure because it was going to cost them money, and I decided that all I would ask of them was to do engagement essentials and engagement design. So I wouldn't put it on them to do the 5 days. And so I said that they would have to have 3 days out of work, and they would need to give me the money for that. And I got a resounding yes immediately, and it did not have one person say no. Then we did engagement in essentials and we changed it and we did methods first, and then everyone said, can we please do design? I said, all I can do is ask your team leaders. Within 2 or 3 days, I had 100% yeses. So they all backed it. So it just shows what's happened over time, that they realise that there's such worth in engagement. So I feel like I've got the easy job. I'm just, I'm spreading all the good word. But Danuki had all the hard work, and she's just passed it over beautifully to me. But we still are so grateful for the award last night, and it just goes to show, what was it? It was 53, 58.
58.
That's pretty amazing. So, we're pretty stoked about that as well. So, thanks everyone.
One more question, if there's any.
Oh, any other? Sorry.
What prompted that change in culture originally, though? So,
yeah.
So back in, I think, 2015, there was an audit undertaken, and there was gaps in the organisation that were identified around adequate engagement to inform decision making. So that kind of led the way.
Alrighty.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Alan. Everyone can hear me okay up the back? Excellent. Did everyone have fun last night? Yes? Everyone was at the dinner? Very good videos, weren't there? Firstly, just want to say congratulations to all the finalists and the winners, and thank you, Aimee and Anne, for the case studies just now. Very interesting. Look, I had the absolute pleasure of being on the judging panel. It was a panel of 3 people. Unfortunately, Anne Telford and Abigail Jeffs couldn't be here today, but asked to pass on their congratulations as well. Just quickly, by show of hands, who actually put in an entry for a core value award this year? Yep, got a small handful. And who's thinking of putting in next year? Excellent, that's good. Well, you're in the right place. Okay, look, I'm going to go through a few tips and tricks. I am going to talk a little bit about the judging criteria. That might get a little bit dry, but I'll try and liven it up a bit, so do bear with me. A bit of a cheeky question. How many core values are there? 7? Very good, yes. Excellent, very important. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so as Alan mentioned at the start, the Core Values Awards showcase the best of the best. So it's really recognising and encouraging best practice community engagement or public participation. So when we talk about best practice, we're talking about, yes, those 7 core values. We're also talking about the approaches that are taught in the IAP2 training. And we're also talking about good use of the public participation spectrum as well. So, as you saw last night, raging success. We're up to, I think, 58 entries this year. I really do think we'll hopefully crack the 100 mark next year. As a judge, it's a little bit like this. It's many long hours, weekends spent reviewing numerous applications. It's all fun, but yeah, it does take a bit of time. But then you get this. So at the end of it all, obviously, there's the big awards night and so many happy faces and finalists and winners. Is this any of you up there dancing at the end of the night? That happened. But no, it's an absolute joy, and it's just really testament to the amount of good work that's being done around Australia and New Zealand. The entries that we had across the 58 ranged from the infrastructure space to the education space. We had safe ways to school, we had green space corridors, we had one about catching mosquitoes, an education campaign. We had research assignments, citizens' juries, you name it, we had it all. So it's really encouraging to see that variety of applications, and I really do encourage everyone to spread the word, to really put in an application. It is a good process, going through and evaluating your engagement program, and hopefully pick up an award as well. So in terms of, I've got an entrance kit here, but essentially there are 3 main categories. I'll just quickly touch on this because most of you would have heard it last night. So Organisation of the Year, there's a Research Award category, and then Project of the Year. And Project of the Year, you would have seen last night, is then broken down into various subcategories. So that's planning, infrastructure, environment, health, disaster and emergency services, community development, and Indigenous. So in terms of the tips, so follow the entrance kit, and I'm just going to pass it around. You may not have seen one before. So that comes out every year and has some really good instructions on how to fill out your application. Really encourage everyone to read it thoroughly. There are some quirks to it. There's a page limit, for example. There's 8 pages that you need to fill out, and some other items as well. But there's an application checklist at the end to take you through step by step. Time, I know it's stating the bleeding obvious, but we all leave things to the last minute. So it's one of those things where you just really do need to allow a lot of time. From memory, I think the applications this year opened on the 29th of January. They closed on the 18th of April. Sounds like a lot of time, but when you think about getting organisational approval, or if you're a consultant working for a client to get client approval, you also need to get references from community members and other stakeholders. So that takes a lot of time as well. So just encourage you to take that into consideration. Choosing a category that best fits. So I just read out Organisation of the Year, that's pretty clear. Project of the Year, with all that many subcategories, it's really important to have a think about where you fit. So if you're thinking of a infrastructure category, but then there's the planning category, is it a planning project or is it a project that is about infrastructure that's in planning? So it gets a little bit quirky, a bit confusing. So ask IAP2 where your project best fits if you're not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
We've entered and we've put in community development and planning,
Yes.
but we only made it to planning. So
Yes.
we've been, I don't know if this is just some feedback, will there be some sort of feedback back to us to say why your project didn't fit in that category?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know there was like some other colleagues that they put in for infrastructure, but then they actually got moved to planning.
Yes.
And we were trying to figure out why. So will there be some kind of
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I won't go into the specifics of each application today, but yes, the judging panel will give feedback to anyone that requests it. And yes, we did have to make a call in some situations. So the checklist talks about putting one project into one category only. So sometimes the judging panel just had to make a best call. Yeah, but definitely feedback is part of the process. The point there about the spectrum, so the public participation spectrum, that's a mouthful, going from inform all the way to empower, you don't need to be up at empower to win an award. And I think that's proven time and time again. You can have a really exceptional inform or consult engagement approach, and that's perfectly fine. It can easily beat an involve or collaborate if it's better. So don't think you have to be up that sort of empower end. That's not what the spectrum's about. It's about coming up with a really tailored, effective engagement program that suits the needs of that particular project and that particular community. Obvious one, addressed each core value. How many are there? 7. Back up what you say with evidence. So it's not just coming up with a really long shopping list of how much engagement you did and the methodology. It's the how, the why. Why was it good? Why was it effective? Why was it unique? You know, how did you set yourself apart from the competition? Grammar and spelling. Again, it sort of sounds obvious, but yeah, still quite a few applications came through with a couple of typos here and there, that's fine, but it was clear that some of them maybe had been done at the last minute, so just, again, allowing that time so you can do a really thorough proofread. If you've got an approval process, probably you've got 8 people reviewing it, but make sure you grab someone that's outside of the project team, someone that doesn't know much about your project or the work that you did, so they can just take an outsider's perspective and do that review for you. Respond to the full judging criteria. We sort of touched on that. This second last point, don't try and retrofit your project to an award entry. So we're really encouraging best practice. And best practice tells us that core values should be considered at the start of your planning. So your community engagement plan or your stakeholder plan really should talk about the core values and how you're going to address them. You should be thinking of them as you're implementing your program throughout the project or program, and then of course evaluating at the end. So if you do all those things, when you come time to writing an award application, piece of cake, it should be fairly straightforward. And have some fun with it, you know, show your uniqueness or show why your community is different or show the challenges, talk about what makes your application great. So So just some notes from the judging panel, and this is not just me, but this is from the others as well. A simple, easy to read application where the headings match the judging criteria and is free from spelling mistakes. It's obvious. Really, that's just about making it a little bit easier on us, the judges. Some people put in a lot of time with graphic design and fancy photos and all that sort of stuff. That is good, and it's certainly eye-catching, but that's not to say an entry that some entries don't even use their full 8 pages. They're just really tightly written, succinct. They have really good headings that the judges can just go straight to and grab that information. And because we've got a criteria, we've got the entry, and we're matching the two up. And we have to work hard to try and find the information. It gets a bit tedious. So make it easy for the judges. Bonus points. Okay. So there are some core values I think we all know that are fairly easy to achieve. There's sort of yep, of course we do that day in, day out. And so everyone gets a fairly high score on those core values. What I've listed is what I believe are the core values that are a little bit trickier. Sometimes they're a little bit challenging for organisations to fulfil. So core value 2, public participation includes the promise that the public's contribution will influence the decision. So in terms of that one, when you're addressing that point, really talk about the fact that you've thought about the public participation spectrum and where your project fits on it and why. Talk about did you tell the community their role in the decision-making process? Did you talk about the non-negotiables? So really, did you have that strategic or critical thinking at the start of the project? Core value 3, this one's often glossed over, but it's important to talk about that tension between both the community and the organisation. So there's always the two sides to the engagement process. We're absolutely interested in what's happening with the community, but we also want to know what's happening within the organisation as well. Core value 5, so this is particularly one I think organisations can struggle with. Show how your engagement approach was shaped by the participants themselves. Did you ask them how they wanted to be engaged? And did you ask them at the start of the project when you were doing your planning? So that's really important. And number 7 is simply about closing the loop. So did you go back to the community and say, well, this was the outcome of the project. This is how we did or weren't able to amend the project. In the case of infrastructure, did the pipeline route change because of your feedback? So really closing that loop with the community. Just these last 3. So this is about setting yourself apart from perhaps the other entries. There's criteria around project challenges, satisfaction, and innovation. So in terms of project challenges, really what the judges are looking to hear about is how did your community engagement or participatory engagement process address these challenges? I'll just give you a couple of examples. So some of the challenges from some of the award-winning entries, they spoke about limited scope for community influence, state election timing, geography, so just having really diverse stakeholder base, a high percentage of people that don't have English as a first language, very technical elements to a project and how they had to explain that to a community. Of course, politics, funding and the media, and a well-connected, educated and online community. Satisfaction. So most entries put a little quote and say, yep, the community was happy, but we really need to hear a lot more than that. So the really good entries spoke about the fact that they set their targets up front in the planning phase. They then spoke about the measurement that they did throughout the project and then obviously then reported on the evaluation results at the end. Things like testimonials, hard data, statistics, survey results, yes quotations, letters of support. All of this is really good stuff, and that's where you can get some bonus points and not get a 3 out of 5, you might get a 4 or 5 out of 5. Innovation, it's a really tricky one, and I think everyone and I've done it myself in the past, you get to that point, was I innovative? And it's interesting, as the years go by, what was innovative obviously isn't anymore. So at the moment, animations, fly-throughs, 3D, visual, augmented reality, all that sort of stuff. But then next year, maybe that's old hat. So what is the next innovation going to be? But the key message with this one is you don't have to spend a lot of money and you don't have to tick the innovation box only. Tried and tested. If you have a really outstanding tried and tested traditional communication approach, stakeholder engagement approach, that too works. So the judges won't mark you down if you don't have augmented reality. So just keep that in mind. Just Finally, I guess I just wanted to talk about the awards process. So these awards have been running for many years. There have been tweaks and changes along the way. I think it was 2 years ago there were some categories added and changed. This is always up for debate, so I guess I would like to open up to the floor. Happy to take questions, of course, as well, but open up to you guys around what changes you might like to see in the awards process. Maybe not next year, but the year after. Time frame, you're given enough time to put an application together. Is the checklist enough? What other categories would you like to see? So happy to, if we get a mic, if we could open that up to the floor. Natasha.
It'd be good to see some remote or regional kind of projects. I come from the NT, for those who don't know. So the big infrastructure, motorway, big projects don't really happen. Our population is 250,000 and we have, that's in our whole of the NT. So I know that's smaller than your cities. And so the projects we have are more remote. So they're really remote projects. So it'd be good to, I guess I'll have to put a submission in, I guess. But it'd be good, to see, and also some private sector would be good to see up there too.
Yeah, so I really encourage more applications from different different types of projects in different locations. The other thing to mention as well is there used to be a engagement on a shoestring. Not sure if you all remember that. There was a category for budgets under, I think, do you remember? Was it 50,000? Yeah. But that's not there anymore. So, if that's of interest, mention that to IAP2. Either Alan or myself, we're happy to take that back. Yep.
Just with the planning category, because it's so broad.
Yes.
You've got roads, we had pricing, City of Hobart had some placemaking stuff. I don't know if we could maybe just sort of drill down the planning, planning for infrastructure or planning for... A bit same as me. Yeah, because exactly.
It is confusing.
So it could be could it be something like planning, and then there's strategic planning or planning for and then you could just sort of have a better bite of the cherry or something,
absolutely.
to do that. So that's just some feedback. It's just quite broad.
Absolutely, and as a judge, so this was my first year judging. I found that as well when I came across the applications that came in. I thought that first exercise of making sure they're all in the right category, we had to really have a good think about that. I think infrastructure perhaps needs to be, maybe there needs to be a construction category, and then it's more about the phase of the project, and push those aside, and then you've got planning, urban planning, strategic planning, So we need some better definitions for sure. Yep, thank you.
Just at the moment in Victoria, there's the local government exposure draft bill that, if that goes through, councils in Victoria will be required to do a 10-year community plan, which is what's happening in New South Wales and WA. So that could have implications for, a bit of a surge of community plans. So I think there's even more reason then to consider, segmenting that concept of planning, because they're so different. And the stakeholders are so different, the scale's so different, whether it's municipal bound or statewide or... And the other one I was wondering is about a community-led project where the organisation has supported a grassroots or a consultant supported a community-led impact project.
Absolutely. I think there was at least one of those I recall this year. It was a partnership between a local council and a community group, and they worked together on their submission. But it would be nice to see some more local sort of community-based initiatives, absolutely. With that other one, the other thing we noticed when you say about something that's coming up, this year we had a lot of applications, I think about 5 or 6, where consultants had worked with water utilities or state governments around Australia with their pricing paths. That was around water, and I think one around gas as well. So it's important for us to keep up with the times and understand what's coming. So thank you.
I just had a little question just about the videos. So it looked as if some of the entrants had actually made videos specifically for the awards. And is that normal in Australia? Is it how do judges look for that as a quality for an entry?
I'm going to have to go back and check the applicant's checklist, but the judges, no, you're absolutely right. The judges don't review those though. They're for the marketing side of things. That's what I understand. So you do an 8-page submission, and we thoroughly review that. There's a 1-page cover sheet and a video, and they're more for the, if you were to progress, then I think IAP2 uses those. Yeah, they were very schmick, weren't they? There's videos last night, very impressive. Yeah.
I'm not sure how many saw our video last night, and it's an awesome video, but it wasn't made for this. It was made for our social media channels, and it just promoted our people's panel. So it was great because we could just upload it. But it certainly wasn't made for this.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or suggestions? Okay, I'll hand back to Alan.